Oh, hey there, Lightworkers. Today it's just me, and I would like to share a story with you. It's all about awakening the Buddha within, which I know sounds very serene and enlightened, as though I arrived floating above the floor. I did not. I came in like most of us do, with a full life and, I don't know, probably one finished thought still rattling around from this morning. But I love this title, because the longer I live, the more I see that awakening rarely looks the way we think it will. I mean, we imagine radiant peace and saffron robes, yet instead, awakening often shows up in ordinary clothes, and it arrives in those moments of discomfort and change, and when life is quietly asking, are you ready to stop shrinking now? Well, for me, one of the earliest moments that taught me that happened in the 7th grade. Now, let me just say, if you can survive junior high, you are at least halfway to enlightenment. I mean, middle school alone should earn you a mala. It forces you to confront suffering, illusion, ego, and, that desperate need to belong, often right before the lunch break. Well, when I was in 7th grade, my family moved, and it was the 5th time we had moved in my young life. And to make it even worse, the move happened right in the middle of the school year. I mean, everybody else had already found their people. The friend groups were formed, the social rules were in place, and there I was, trying to look normal while thinking, well, this sucks. And then I chose guitar as one of my electives. And I was actually pretty good at guitar. And the way the class worked was this. There was a circle of chairs, and to get an A, you had to challenge the other guitar students in recital. And if you played better than the person ahead of you, you moved up a chair. So I moved up quickly. I kept climbing until I landed in 2nd chair. Well, now, ordinarily, that would be exciting. But 1st chair belonged to Michelle Zwicker, and Michelle was the school bully. So now I'm the new girl, dropped into this already formed social ecosystem, and I'm expected to challenge the meanest girl in the room for 1st chair? Well, on the day I was supposed to play against Michelle, I went into the restroom right before class, and I was standing at the sink, washing my hands, and I looked up in the mirror, trying to gather my thoughts about me, and suddenly I realized that right behind me was Michelle. And she said to me something that I will always remember. She said, "If you take my chair, I will kill you." Now, that's not subtle. That's not conscious communication, but it was clear. And I believed her. So when it came time to play, I played just well enough to keep 2nd chair for the rest of the semester. Now that stayed with me for years, because I did not hold back because I lacked the talent. I held back because I felt threatened. Somewhere in me, fear had already convinced me that 1st chair was way too dangerous. And I think that's true for so many of us. Maybe not literally we've been threatened in a junior high bathroom lately, and thank goodness for that, but many of us have had some version of that moment. Maybe it was an old wound, or a criticism, or a fear that if we really stepped into our place, something would be taken from us. So we get strategic. We become just visible enough, just bold enough, just successful enough that we don't disappear. We manage our brightness. Can you relate to that? And that is 2nd chair living. And here's the sneaky part. 2nd chair living can sound very wise. It dresses up as humility or patience, or I'm just waiting until the time is right. And sometimes that's true, but mostly it's fear. And that's one of the reasons Buddhist teaching has meant so much to me, because it has a way of inviting us to look at what is actually happening in the mind without all the drama and decoration. The Dhammapada opens with a line that has stayed with me for years. Mind precedes things, dominates them, and creates them. In other words, the inner story matters. If fear is shaping the mind, then fear will start shaping the life. And before long, we're not responding to life as it is. We are responding to the story we are telling ourselves about what might happen if we really show up. And if I'm honest, a lot of us are not peaceful. We're just scared with a spiritual vocabulary. Ooh, yeah. So now, years later, I had an experience that brought all of this back to me in a way I never expected. Recently, I had my first art exhibit in 40 years. It was a solo exhibit in the Southern Missouri Arts Connection in Hollister, where I live, and it contained 33 pen and ink drawings from 2 different sketchbooks. And I had kept these books over the past decades. They were deeply personal, and very few people had ever seen them. And I had not made them for an exhibit. And I certainly had not made them thinking, oh, one day this will be beautifully framed and I will stand under gallery lighting answering thoughtful questions. No, this is not how that happened. I made those drawings because I was going through a deep spiritual awakening, and I was trying to understand a book called Awakening the Buddha Within. Now, let me tell you what happened the first time I read that book. I thought, what? And then the second time I read it, I thought, what? I still didn't get it. So I did the only thing I knew how to do, and I began to draw the concepts I was trying to understand. Not because I understood them, but because I didn't. I mean, I drew because I was reaching for more meaning that was just beyond my words. Georgia O'Keeffe once said, I found I could say things with color and shapes that I couldn't say in any other way. And that quote means so much to me because that's exactly what those sketchbooks became. They weren't projects. They were a place where I was trying to see what I could not yet fully articulate. And over time, I created more than 60 drawings. And for that exhibit, I chose 33 of them. And for each one, I displayed the page where I had written the concept from the book beside the drawing itself, almost like letting people look over my shoulders in the process. Well, opening night arrived, and I was excited, but honestly, I didn't expect much beyond polite interest. I mean, I thought that's what would happen, but that wasn't what happened at all. People really looked. They stood with the drawings, and some of them were actually moved in ways I had never imagined. One woman in particular was especially touched by a drawing that I call When Infinity Breaks. And she asked me about it, and I told her that for me, it was about letting go of the past, even beautiful things in the past, because memories can sometimes turn from gratitude into sorrow when we revisit them in the wrong spirit, like in the spirit of missing it. And I told her I'd been thinking of things from long ago, maybe a decade or more. Well, she said for her, it was something from only 2 years ago. And then she told me she loved the drawing and she wanted to buy it. Well, I was really touched. I mean, not only because she was moved, but because I had never really intended to sell anything. I was complete with the reason I had made those drawings, and they had already done their work in me. So to discover that one of them had now become meaningful to somebody else in such a personal way, that was a surprise and also a gift. It also showed me something I had not fully seen before. The girl in the guitar class and the woman in the art exhibit were standing at the same threshold. One version of me decided it was safer not to fully show what I could do, and the other version, thankfully, let the work come out of the drawer and into the room. And that's the through line. The guitar story is about withholding, and the exhibit story is about offering. One is what fear does to our gifts, and the other is what happens when we finally let them breathe. And that, to me, is awakening the Buddha within. Not becoming perfect or fearless, just finally beginning to notice how often fear has been making decisions. A monk says to his teacher, "Master, I have become very humble, very quiet, and very small." And the teacher says, "Wonderful, but are you enlightened or just hiding?" That one always gets me because so much of what we call shrinking is not wisdom, it's self-protection. And I saw that so clearly at the exhibit. I mean, people were connecting with the work in all kinds of ways. They were seeing things in the drawings that I never consciously put there. And I was deeply touched by that because I had never intended to make the drawings public at all. In fact, I was ready to sell the originals because I felt finished with them. It was Carl, my husband, and my daughter that were the ones who said, "No, don't sell the originals, we want them." And one of the things the exhibit revealed to me is that sometimes what heals us privately is meant to help others publicly. And if I can gently bring this into the Million Dollar Lightworker conversation, I think that is so true of our businesses too. So many lightworkers are sitting on wisdom and gifts and teachings and programs and books and messages that could genuinely help people, but they're still standing in the bathroom with Michelle Zwicker. They're still second guessing. They're still managing their brightness, playing well enough to stay safe. Not because they're not gifted, but because fear made first chair feel too dangerous. And the world misses something when that happens. Your work is not meant to stay in the drawer forever. Your voice is not meant to remain private forever. And certainly your message is not more spiritual because it stays hidden. It actually becomes more sacred when it's shared in service. Pablo Picasso is often credited with saying, "The meaning of life is to find your gift, and the purpose of life is to give it away." And during my artist talk that evening, people asked me all the usual questions people ask artists. I kept telling them, I didn't really consider myself an artist, which is a funny thing to say when you have an art degree and a wall full of pen and ink drawings right behind you. But there it is. Yes, I have training and I have skill and I know my way around a drawing, but I don't walk around every day saying to myself, I'm an artist. I mean, I don't even own a painter's easel. This wasn't a project in the same sense. It just happened. Someone asked me which drawing was my favorite, and I told them it was the one called The Veil of Samsara. It was a drawing of a woman with a blindfold on, and on the outside of the blindfold is a beautiful landscape with a fork in the road. Two clear paths she could take. But because she was blindfolded, she couldn't see either one. And I told them that that drawing felt like me. That was me trying to understand these concepts, blindfolded to what was possible, blindfolded to choices that may have been there all along. And isn't that so much of the human experience? We think life is closed when really it's our vision that's clouded. We think we have no options when perhaps we just can't see them. And sometimes awakening begins with the simple, tender recognition, oh, I may not be seeing clearly. That is a holy moment. Someone else asked if there was any drawings that I didn't like, and I said yes, a few. And she asked whether that was because of the concept or the execution? And I said, definitely the execution. And then she asked whether I had ever gone back to reread the concept behind one of those drawings to see if perhaps there was something I had not fully understood yet. I had to think about that one. And I told her no. And then she asked if I would ever consider redrawing it. Again, I said no. And then I realized maybe I should. Not because I'm incomplete, but because awakening keeps going. You can be done with one season and still discover something new in it later. And then Carl said something after the exhibit that really stayed with me. He said, you know, honey, he pointed out how much the drawings had helped the people who saw them. And then came the deeper question that he asked me, which was, what if I had never shared them? That is what playing small sometimes costs us. It's not only that we limit our own life, it's that we may withhold something that was meant to circulate. Georgia O'Keeffe also said, I have been absolutely terrified every moment of my life, and I've never let it keep me from doing a single thing I wanted to do. Now that is a line I trust, because it doesn't pretend fear isn't there. It just refuses to let fear become the authority. And that reminds me of another little Zen-style joke. A student asked the master, how do I stop living in fear? And the master said, stop practicing. That's it. Stop practicing fear. Stop becoming so fluent in smallness that it starts to feel like wisdom. And that's where I found myself now, after the exhibit. I feel complete with the series of drawings, truly complete, not because they were perfect or because I know exactly what comes next. I feel complete because they did what they came to do. They helped me understand, and I discovered they help others feel. They made the journey from private awakening to shared offering. And now, honestly, part of me just wants to sit under the Bodhi tree and observe. I mean, that feels like the right ending to this chapter for me. Not going back to second chair, but just resting in a quieter kind of knowing. I mean, there are seasons for expression and seasons for courage and seasons for letting the work out into the world. And then there are also seasons for being still enough to realize that the fruit is already ripe. You do not have to keep tugging at the branch. You do not have to keep proving your worth by producing more. Sometimes the most awakened thing you can do is let something be complete. So if I were to leave you with anything today, it would be this. Notice where fear has talked you into second chair. And notice where you've been managing your brightness. And then ask, very gently of course, what might come forward if I stopped obeying that fear? For some of you, it might just be a conversation. For others, it might be a piece of art. And for many of you, especially my light workers, it may be the message or the teaching or the movement that's been waiting for you to stop hiding and finally let it serve. The Buddha within is not far away. It's the awake part of you. It's the part that sees that blindfold and reaches up to loosen it. It's the part that knows fear is real, but not in charge. It knows that it's willing to share because it may be exactly what someone else needs. And if awakening looks less like floating on a lotus, right? And more like finally getting honest about where you've been hiding, welcome. You're in great company. Check us out at solopreneur.com. You'll find your tribe there, people just like you, wanting to make a positive, compassionate impact on the world. You'll find the Million Dollar Lightworkers and the Conscious Creators, not because we're focused on money, but because we know that money is an energy that helps us to get our messages out to the world. Now, before we wrap up, let's just take a brief moment together to take a gentle breath together. And another. We become still for just a moment and remember that the Buddha within us is not far away. It's that awake presence of spirit in us, the crystal clear place, the place of compassion, and the place that sees with love instead of fear. And so today we release the habit of second chair living. We release the old stories that told us to stay small, stay safe by withholding our light. And for those of us called as light workers, we let ourselves feel the truth that our light was never meant to be hidden. It was meant to expand. It was meant to serve, to bless. And we bless those gifts within us. We bless the healing that has come through our own private journey. And we trust that what is ripened in us may now serve others in just the perfect way. And may we see more clearly. May we fear less obediently. May we share more truthfully. May we rest when a season is complete. And may each of us awaken ever more deeply to the divine presence already living within. And so it is. And remember, light workers, you are never too old, you're never too young to step into your purpose and share your gifts with the world. And that's what we do at the Million Dollar Lightworker and Conscious Creator, is support you. Because our purpose is to help you with your purpose. So check us out at solopreneur.com. And until next time, keep shining bright.